This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Recorded live on Wednesday afternoons in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 48, May 7th, 2014. Overnight Website Challenge.
Good afternoon.
Hey, everybody.
What's going on?
Had to find the unmute button.
What a lackluster start to the show today. I may have to fix this in post.
You can always press Control-D to use the keyboard to unmute to mute.
John's been trying to hide that from me for years.
So here we are at episode 48, and we're talking about Overnight Website Challenge, and we have Chris Weber as a guest, and we'll talk to him in a minute. This topic has excited me when I heard about it probably about 3 months ago, and I saw Chris's latest webcast about it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I really wanted to have him on the show, so here he is today. But before we get started with Chris, welcome Jason Pavental from HW Design.
Hey, Steve. I was pretty excited when you brought this up because I participated in a one-day site building project at a Drupal camp a couple of years ago, and it was fun. And within a few weeks they had a site live, but there's really in an 8-hour span, especially in the context of a camp where maybe the prep isn't exactly as prepped as you'd hope. It's really difficult to get something really fully done. So I'm excited to hear about what you guys are doing and how you've made it into something that can really deliver.
I participated. It was probably, I hate to say this because it makes me sound so old. It's probably about 18 years ago. That's so sad to say that. It hurts me. But I participated in a competition. This was a programming competition. I think it was in South Carolina. It was for the company I was working for at the time, and they brought together all of these current web technology gurus into this place, and they gave them a competition. It was like a 12-hour thing to build a website, and we were there with .NET people and Java people and all this kind of stuff. And I went down for this competition, and we failed miserably. It was a terrible experience. This was a competition with a cash prize and really some notoriety in the tech industry, but the team that I put together was horrible. It was a disaster.
Even the failures are important.
Yes.
Learn a lot.
But I love the idea, and we'll learn more about this in a few minutes. Of this overnight website challenge is about building something for a organization in a short period of time. And I think the merits of what this is about and the tools that exist today, it makes this kind of thing really valuable. And I can't wait to talk about it more. But John Picozzi from Oomph. Hey, John.
Hey guys, how's it going?
I'm glad to see that you're bringing us back your baseball hat with the Red Sox and your sweatshirt.
Yeah.
And his new clean-shaven look. Can't forget that.
Yeah, I didn't have much going on today other than working from home. So no real reason to get all spruced up.
Except for all of us. Thanks, John.
Well, I know the listeners don't really care what I wear. So
John's got a wardrobe made for radio.
If you do, feel free to express your concerns on what I wear at me on Twitter, and I'll be more than happy to try to.
Oh, please, someone take him up on that.
Try to oblige you on
That's at John Picozzi. Hashtag get a wardrobe.
I'm sorry, was that ghetto wardrobe?
However you want to take it, John.
And we also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
How you doing?
How are things out there in Middle Massachusetts?
Pretty good. It's warming up finally.
Similar to Middle Earth, but without the ogres
and dragons. I don't think there are any dragons either.
Unfortunately,
all the dragons are in the code.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this topic too. I know at DrupalCon Portland, there was an initiative. There was an emergency in Oklahoma. Um, I don't recall exactly what it was. I think it was a landslide or some flooding or something, and they were able to put together a website, helpforok.com, to help people organize trips, organize where to stay, um, organize rides, and a couple issues like that. And there's been an initiative since then to build it into an emergency response distribution that FEMA could use. So I'd be interested to see how that kind of ties into this, if it's had any influence, or you know, if if you even knew about that. But it's definitely a fascinating topic.
So let's move on to our guest today. We have Chris Weber joining us, and I'll give a brief intro here of him. Chris is an Android, a .NET, and Drupal developer, which is that in itself is an interesting topic. And he works currently for the Nerdery in Minneapolis. He is the creator and an active member of the Google Plus Drupal community.
You can find by searching for the Drupal community on Google+. Unfortunately, we were not able to shorten the name.
No, and it's actually easy to find. I've been a member of the community for probably maybe 8 or 10 months now, and when I got involved with Google+, just search Drupal, and this community shows up. You can see by the number of members that it's the one that you should be involved with. Chris is also the host of a show called Drupal and Coffee in the Morning. This doesn't seem to be a weekly show, but it seems to be sort of an ad hoc, maybe on a monthly basis show, and it's actually where I learned about the topic that we're having today, which is the Overnight Website Challenge. So his show was what spawned this conversation today. Chris is also an active member of the Drupal community. He attends Drupal camps, has done presentations. He's also active on IRC. And one of the interesting things I just want to point out is that I noticed on Google Plus that as Chris is attending DrupalCon in Austin, he went out on a limb and went to Airbnb and rented a house for the week, and then he put himself out there and said, "Hey, I just rented a house. Can someone else help me pay for this?" and want to be my roommate for the week. So I understand that the house is full right now, John. So you can't join there and stay with him. But welcome,
Sorry, John.
Chris.
It's all right. I think Jason and I are bunking up anyway.
Awesome.
Sir? What?
News to you?
Apparently.
So welcome, Chris, to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've been, of course, following your show ever since I found out about it, and I guess I found out about it on Google+.
That's true.
Because it's been a long time since I've been able to get a list of podcasts. I used to be all over iTunes and had a curated list of podcasts that I listened to, but I stopped doing that a number of years ago and really haven't started again. But I'm always able to catch the videos that you guys make of the show on Google+. It's been really good.
So, Chris, before we get into the Overnight Website Challenge, I want to talk about Google Plus a little bit. You created the Google Plus community, and I guess that really wasn't anything hard to do other than creating a new community. But I think it's only been maybe a little over a year, you've managed to get over like almost 6,900 members. Maybe
well, it wasn't last November, but it was the November before that. Okay. That the Google Plus launched the community feature, and I just immediately, once I found out about that new feature, I just went ahead and created a Drupal community. And mind you, I wasn't the only one that did that. In fact, there was probably, by the time that I created my community, there was probably like 4 or 5 other communities that were created by various people. And I just knew I had to do it because people kind of know me as the person who doesn't shut up about Drupal. I'm talking about Drupal in social circumstances that aren't tech people around. You know, it's a cocktail party. I'm probably going to talk about Drupal at some point. So I knew that I needed a place.
You're the life of the party, huh?
Oh yes, I'm. People enjoy. No, they don't. So I just knew I had to find a place where there were other people that wanted to talk or at least listen about Drupal. And I already was in love with Google Plus and everything that it provides. So it's kind of like two of my favorite things bundled together. It's like peanut butter and chocolate.
One of the things that I find interesting about the Google Plus community is that there's not a lot of people there looking for help. There are some. It's more about sharing information, which is really interesting about a community like this. It's not people saying, "Hey, I'm desperate to get an answer. Please help me."
Yeah, and it should be noted that there are lots of places that people can find on the internet where people are talking about Drupal. There's a LinkedIn community. There's, of course, groups.drupal.org. There are the forums on Drupal.org. There's the Stack Exchange, where if you really wanted to go with questions that need to be answered, that's kind of where you would go. There's the Reddit community, and there's probably a number of places I'm forgetting. And all of them are really good resources, except for the LinkedIn community.
Well, that
I've gone there a few times. It just seems to be a wasteland.
Yeah, that seems to be true of most of them, unfortunately.
I seem to manage to get 3 emails a day from them, though.
Oh. But of something that has been particularly vibrant is the Reddit community. And it's been an excellent source for people who just have like questions that need to answer, that want to ask a different community other than the Stack Exchange people. And it seems to be that because of the kind of posts that you can make in Google Plus, where they are like image posts or video posts or really rich media links to articles, that's kind of the place where you want to just drop something that other people want to listen to or watch or read.
I know it's been a great source for me to getting information related to Drupal. I'm curious on, as we'll call you the founder of the community, how much work is it for you to maintain the community? If someone was out there wishing to start a new Google Plus community, what does that mean in terms of resources to maintain and dealing with spam and monitoring?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, creating a community is pretty easy. All of the difficult decisions you need to make within the first couple seconds when you're creating the community. Do you want it to be a public one? Do you want it to be a private one? I've created a number of private communities that were like project-based, where we could just all get together and post things about a project, and nobody ever sees those because they're not even listed. But the public ones can be a little bit time-consuming. Google does a good job because they're pretty good at catching spam in the first place. So some of the posts that are kind of like in the gray area of, is this spam or is this not, those are the ones that you have to manage. And if you're running a community of any size, whether it's probably around the time that you hit about 250 or 50 members, you need other moderators to help you with that effort.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the, I guess I could look this up because I have a web browser right here. But I think the Google Plus community.
How many moderators do you have? I know there's a few because I see them posting in there every once in a while.
Yeah, I'll get you a real number here. I have 13, including me. Okay. And that I mean, a while ago, I think about 6 months ago or something like that, I was really struggling with the amount of spam that I was helping, that I was trying to get through. I think at the time we had something like 4 or 6 moderators, and it's difficult. You don't get any metrics. You don't really see how active the moderators are in their moderation efforts. So it's not really something that you can prove out or plan for, and calculate how many moderators you really need. But with 13 that we have, with our level of activity, we do a pretty good job. of catching the spams that get through. There are some persistent spammers. Like somebody kept on posting about wine. I don't know why, or somebody kept on posting about different coffees, and I think it was because of my podcast or something like that.
Is that spam? Maybe I'd like to see the wine and the coffee posts, actually.
Yeah, well, in the Drupal community, you would hope that you find Drupal things that may be related in Drupal in some way.
Well, I can tell you this. As a member of the community, I don't even remember ever seeing... No, that's not true. But I see very little spam, if ever any. So you guys, the efforts you're doing to keep the community clean is really, really good.
Yeah, I'm noticing that too. And on a day-to-day basis, I may be blocking 1, 2 bits of posts, and they all go into like a moderation queue automatically. Like Drupal, Google catches them and puts them there. Otherwise, I don't like find posts and say, oh, I don't like that one. I'm gonna block that one. I don't do any of that.
So they fall into a queue for you to review before you release them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times I pass them through because it's like, whoa, you were too aggressive there, Google.
Right.
It's clearly on topic.
Very interesting. So I would encourage anyone to who's listening to this show to sign up for the Google Plus community. It's been a very valuable resource for us here on this show. I know that I've taken a number of links that have been posted on the Google Plus community and posted them on our Twitter feed as resources for people to read about Drupal. So.
And hopefully the value over time is that inside this community you can search. You can search about the posts that have been posted there. So if you're looking for like what people have posted about a specific topic, you'll be able to search within this subset of information instead of the entire internet.
A lot of these issues on your front end.
That's
Chris,
great. So go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just curious as far as if there's any thinking to kind of bringing this community, kind of getting it off the Google Plus platform at any point. And the reason I ask that is because lately there's been kind of a little bit of turmoil over in Google Plus land with key people leaving and development teams being reallocated. So, are you worried about, Google Plus going away or potentially changing when you have, almost 7,000 members of this group that's really active?
Well, I got a couple things to say to that. And one is, no, I do not fear the immediate demise of Google Plus. Google Plus is a thing. It's going to be around for a while. It's not the next Google Reader. And if it ends up going away, I would be very, very sad. But two, the Google Plus community is fun. It's a nice exercise, but it is not a mission-critical resource. The mission-critical resource is the larger Drupal community, and the Google Plus community here is not attempting to supplant or replace or impact the overall community resources we use. The real focus of the community should be in IRC. That's where the people are. Or the Reddit community, or the groups.drupal.org. This Google Plus thing is there because people are going to be on Google Plus, and they're going to be searching for Drupal.
Right. I think with any of these platforms, it's about reducing friction to participate.
Yeah.
And if people are already here,
people just naturally want to go to Google Plus. That's true. That's a thing. People naturally want to go to Facebook. And they'll search for information wherever they are. So might as well connect them with the larger community that's going on. And in my Google or in the Google Plus community, I do link out to a number of other resources they can connect to and be a part of the larger Drupal community.
That's great. So, Chris, thank you for all your efforts there. I know I certainly appreciate it. And you're not only the creator, but you are a very frequent poster there, too. So,
once again, we don't have any stats on that, so I can't.
I can give you my stats. You're a frequent contributor. So let's move on to the overnight website challenge.
Right.
What is that at a very high sense? What is the overnight website challenge?
Well, the Overnight Website Challenge is a 24-hour event where teams of developers and nonprofits work together to make websites for those nonprofits. So most of the time it's creating a brand new website for the nonprofit. Sometimes it's creating like an Android app or whatever the nonprofit needs within that 24-hour time period. But a lot of the times it is an event that lasts 24 hours, but the development usually does not take 24 hours. It usually takes a lot more.
So I want to ask you a few follow-up questions there. First one is, you just mentioned Android. So the overnight challenge, as it's structured, this is sponsored by a particular company?
Well, it's called the Nerdery Overnight Website Challenge. There are a lot of folks here at the Nerdery that help put the event on and organize it. And we do financially support it, but we have a number of sponsors that take an active part in making it. So it's just one of the things that we do every year. And this year was pretty unique in that we had the event here in the Twin Cities and in Kansas City and in Chicago on the same day.
Okay, so the Notary as a company is the company that sort of puts this event together,
yeah.
Right? And they do it across the 3 cities that they have a presence in.
Yep.
Yep. And it's not just websites. So you mentioned Android.
There was one year I remember I did the web challenge in Chicago, and there was a team that made or attempted to make an Android app within the 24-hour period for the nonprofit. I don't know how frequent that is, but the challenge has the word website in it,
right.
and most of the time people are making websites, but I don't think that excludes the possibility that a team would want to do more in the future. The fact remains, it's a 24-hour development challenge, but you don't really have 24 hours to do the work. Some of those hours, you're not going to be at your best. I tell people that are putting teams together to plan for having about, at maximum, 10 developer hours per person where you're actually going to be productive and make things. And if you're thinking about like a time budget, just think about the number of developers you have in your team times 10, and those are the total amount of hours that you'll have to make something for your nonprofit.
So let's set this up. So there's a 24-hour period that developers get together to build a website. Mm-hmm. Prior to that 24 hours, there's been some work that's been done, which is selecting nonprofits, selecting projects, and things like that.
Actually,
right?
it's a little bit different. The unique kind of twist on this event is that the developer team and the nonprofit don't know how they're going to be paired up with until right before the clock starts.
Gotcha.
So as a developer team, like this year was the 6th time I've done this challenge. And so kind of what I've learned along the way is that you can't walk into the event without any kind of prep. Just like your experience, Stephen, if you have a team of developers, especially if they've never worked together, you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't get coordinated and plan things out. And so every year I try to plan out, like, what are things that most nonprofits want? What do they need? And I usually go down the road pretty far into thinking about, like, what should we build ahead of the challenge? But all of those decisions, all of that prep, is done without the insight of which nonprofit we're actually going to get paired with and what do they actually need.
So, Chris, you're a team leader. Is that what you call yourself?
Yeah, team captain.
Okay, team captain.
Yeah.
And you put a team together of how many developers?
Maximum of 10.
Okay, so you got a team of people that you've put together, and prior to the event actually kicking off, you do not know the nonprofit or basically the challenge you have in front of you is what you're going to build.
That's
but
right.
You do know some basic parameters. It is a nonprofit. So that gives you a lot of guidance in terms of things you might need to have done ahead of time. But prior to the challenge kicking off, there's been some selection of those nonprofits. Can you give some insight into what that's about?
So both development teams and nonprofits have to put their proposal together for entering into the challenge. Development teams need to find a team of about 8 to 10 developers and have to be a pretty well-rounded team. You can't just have a team of back-end developers running into the challenge. You're not going to be able to implement a design with that.
Yep.
And so nonprofits also have a bit of work they need to do. They need to describe their nonprofit, describe their current website situation. They have to be a 50c3 nonprofit. I think I said that right. And they have to be able to tell about what a new website will impact, what do they want in a new website, and they also have to be recommended. They have to actually have people come in to their proposal and write comments or recommendations for the nonprofit. And a team of judges, the same judges that organize the event and do the final judging, I think those are the people, somebody decides which development teams and which nonprofits are accepted into the challenge. And the number of nonprofits and development teams are basically limited by the amount of space that we have at the event. I think that's somewhere close to 16 different nonprofits, and typically we get something on the order of 60 to 80 nonprofits that register for the event.
Wow.
Okay.
I think this year, I thought I saw a statistic on this, that if you include the events that happened in Chicago and Kansas City together with the work that was done in the Twin Cities, 114 nonprofits received about $4 million of donated professional services.
Wow. That's fantastic.
If you consider the time, and the rate.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. I wanna do this next year.
Well, all you gotta do is fly to the Twin Cities, or if you want to be on a team, let me know. We'll put a team together.
Let's talk about that at the end of this conversation of how someone could get involved next year.
Oh, sure.
And let's sort of move through the event. So there's some being preliminary work done. You've created a team, and the day happens. So
yes.
Here we are sitting at the overnight challenge. What does that look like?
So I always fall for this every year. It'll be right before the event, a couple days before the event. The teams and the nonprofits get together for a speed date. We get 5 minutes, or a couple minutes, a handful of minutes to talk to each nonprofit.
5 minutes?
We get a very limited amount of time to talk to each nonprofit. It's this one day, after work event.
Yeah.
And there's 16 or so nonprofits. So if you have 5 minutes to talk to each, well, that's only going to take
Oh, because you don't know who you've been paired with yet.
Right. So this is our first and for most situations our only chance to meet the nonprofits ahead of the challenge. And we hear about their details. We start talking tech a little bit. Try to not only are they pitching to us, but we're pitching to them what we can do together. And so every time that happens, I come out of that event thinking, obviously we're going to be paired with this one because they obviously need the work that we do, because the work we do from a Drupal perspective is for complex content, highly structured content. It's able to handle many different kinds of situations. A lot of people are coming in and they basically are saying, we want WordPress. We just want to make a blog. We don't really care about complex content. We have a very simple amount of content. And so for those that...
Chris, you just brought up an interesting point that we need to make here, is that this is not a Drupal-only event, right?
Oh, no. In fact, for years, my team that I always call Drupal Rocks, very obviously a Drupal team, has been the only Drupal team. For the last 2 years, in the Twin Cities at least, there has been another Drupal team. And I will get to this, but they won the Best in Show. this year, and hopefully we'll be able to show that site.
Okay.
And so yeah, there's a lot of different teams. Some of them are .NET teams. Some of them are WordPress teams. Some of them are teams that bring their own proprietary CMS into the challenge.
I can't imagine you have any Ruby on Rails teams.
We have, especially in the Chicago
okay.
event.
All right.
Chicago's a very strong Ruby on Rails town, and they the 1 year, I think the 2 years that I've been in the Chicago challenge, there was a Ruby on Rails team.
Okay.
Yeah, so really you're just pitching your capability.
Yep.
So from that challenge, teams score nonprofits, nonprofits score teams, and based on those numbers and the comments we make, the judges pair up the nonprofit and the development team. And we don't find out about that until right before the event.
And the judges are trying to pair the teams for greatest success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Not the greatest challenge, but the greatest success.
No, the challenge is already difficult enough.
Right.
No, you don't need to make it any more difficult.
Right.
So on the day of the event, it's kind of like a mad rush. You bring all your tech in. You have these very tiny tables because you're trying to get as many teams in space as possible. And for a lot of times, it's the first time I meet some of my team members. We've talked a lot online, and we send emails, and we coordinate and all that. But the first time we meet face to face, I usually am shocked by how tall some of my teammates are, or how short, or whatever.
So that's fascinating to me. So you pull a team together,
yeah,
of people that you don't know.
Well, not completely. I mean, how much do you really need to know somebody without physically see them?
Right, true.
So
like you and I know each other, right?
Right, but I really don't know how tall you are, Stephen.
That's true.
So a lot of the years, what I try to do is I try to have part of my team be people that I know and I can trust and I rely on, people who I work with or people who I've worked with outside of my normal work.
Mm-hmm.
The Twin Cities Drupal community is rather blessed by having so many intelligent Drupal developers here. There's a deep pool to select from, and this year I was able to bring in a lot of people that I don't work with on a day-to-day basis, but I do trust their work. We had David Needham, who, if I have to remember the names of the companies that they all work for, I'll probably forget something.
If you could get these to me later, we'll make sure we post them in the show notes.
We'll make sure we post all the teams.
All right, okay.
But a good team isn't a full team until you cover all your bases. You can't just have great front-end development and back-end development. You need to have people that understand user experience design, and content strategy. And so you need a good, well-rounded team, and that's what I try to do every year. I try to have a good, well-rounded team.
Chris, how do you build your team? Is it like people submit their resumes to you and you go through them and you interview them, or?
No, usually no one's coming to me. It's a lot of work. I don't want to unsize that, but I have to go out and ask people if they're interested, and sometimes I have to actively convince them. And so, staying up all night for work for a nonprofit is going to be a fun time.
How do you generally try to compose your team? Do you want 2 front-end developers, 2 back-end developers, 3 site builders, a project manager? How do you tend to break that kind of role up?
Well, if I lean anyways, I try to lean towards front-end development. A lot of the times, I feel confident bringing in maybe 3, maybe 4 back-end developers, and usually I'm one of them. So, and typically what happens during the development is I don't get too many opportunities to actually develop things. Because as team captain, I'm also trying to be the PM. And some years I've brought in a PM so that I wouldn't have to do that, but I just naturally gravitate to that anyway. So.
And you just end up managing the PM.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, typically what I try to do is I try to bring in somebody that's going to be the nonprofit liaison, somebody who's working with them and guiding them through the process the entire time, so I don't have to do that. And usually that person is also double duty as the content strategist, content creator, helping them input the content into the site. I try to have at least one just UX person that all they need to do is make wireframes and designs. They don't need to code at all. They just need to be able to put a design together, and then 2 to 3 really good front-enders, although I'd love to have more. Front-end development is a difficult thing to parse into separate tasks. Usually the front-ender needs to be the person that's doing all the work, but we try to componentize the work so that somebody can work on components and someone can work on the overall theme. The most difficult thing is making sure that everyone's busy. Because on one hand, we want to constrain the ambition of the project so that we're not overcommitting to what we can actually get done within the 24-hour time period. But on the other hand, we need to have enough things for people to do so that they can all be busy and they don't come back to me saying, well, what should I do next? And so
that was the biggest challenge in the one that I participated in, was the blockers. You know, where like you can't, like these people can't be doing X until, you know, these other people are done with Y.
And nobody can do anything until we come to terms on what we're actually going to build.
So, Chris, that actually leads into a question that I have. So, when you guys get there, you have nothing, no sitemap, no wireframes, nothing. You have to develop all of that stuff within the 24 hours?
That's not a rule. People, you can enter the challenge with as much done as you want. And, you know, I was mentioning that I fell for it again this year. I was pretty convinced that we were going to get a nonprofit, and they already had a Drupal site. They wanted to stay with Drupal. They had very specific challenges they wanted to solve, and so I went deep down the rabbit hole of building out solutions for all those things so that we would start the challenge with those, but we didn't get that nonprofit, and we had to throw it all out.
Ooh.
So we started the challenge with you know, we always start the challenge with Drupal, and that already provides a number of ready-to-go solutions. And in a Drupal context, if they just want a website that advocates their nonprofit, allows them to have rich media and a lot of different kinds of content types, that's a relatively simple feat to accomplish within a 6-8 hour time period.
Are there ever nonprofits that, I mean, I've done quite a bit of work with quite a few different nonprofits. Have you ever had to, or how do you limit the amount that they're looking for? An example would be, you know, your nonprofit client needs to integrate with their, you know, their donation management system or whatever. Like, how do you either say, no, we're not going to be able to do that in the 24 hours, or maybe the opposite? Maybe you take it on and you do it. How does that usually work?
I've developed a motto over the years, and it's too small, one big. We have enough time to solve 2 small things and 1 big thing. So what's your 1 big thing? And that tends to focus things. The other question I ask is, what will make this project fail? Let's just focus on that. Let's just focus on all the things that will make this whole effort fail, and let's do those things. Let's cut out all the other things that don't directly impact the mission of the nonprofit. And for a lot of people, that is, you know, accepting donation, but that tends to be a solved enough problem that could be one of the smalls. Some of them want to do like they have a nonprofit that has tours. Like one year we had the Bakken Museum, and they have children that come in and tour the museum. And this year we had Home for Life, a animal sanctuary, and people come in and tour the animals, and so, you know, we start talking about those kinds of implementations.
Hey, Chris, it brings up a question that John sort of touched on here, is what is the expectation set for the nonprofit when they come into this?
Managing expectations is key.
Are they expecting to have a full-blown website with all the stuff they want, and how do you manage what they're signing up for here?
Yeah, the people who organize the event do a great job of managing expectations. They let them know that this is not a sure thing. You know, when you enter the challenge and you get a development team, we're all going to work together towards an end goal, but it does not guarantee success. So they just need to know that whatever is made during the challenge may be something they want to use, or maybe just something they throw out.
So how much does the nonprofit pay for this event?
They pay with time.
So,
there's no entrance fee.
Gotcha. And so a nonprofit will submit an application for this event.
Yes.
They may or may not be selected. If they are selected, they have no financial commitment to this venture.
Right.
So
the nonprofits are required to have one of their representatives embedded with the team for the entire 24-hour time period. Now, they could have, shifts where they have a different member embedded with the team throughout that 24-hour time period, but that person that is embedded needs to be a decision maker, so that we don't have to call up somebody else to make the decision.
That's a good way to do it.
So, Chris, at the end of the day, say for whatever reason too much was bitten off, you had hurdles that you couldn't be overcome. At the end of the 24 hours, that nonprofit has a quasi-functional or say functional website, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that they want. What mechanisms are there for them to get that project completed? After the 24-hour period.
One of the ways that teams can differentiate themselves and make them a more, increase their chances of being selected into the challenge is to be very descriptive about what their commitment after the challenge is going to be. And what I've learned over the years is that this really isn't a 24-hour 24-hour challenge.
Right.
The reality of it is that whichever nonprofit that my team's going to be with as team captain, it's my moral duty to continue on with the nonprofit after the challenge. And I've just the long and the short of it is that I'm going to be with my nonprofit for a year. From challenge to challenge, I'm always going to be with the nonprofit.
And is that is that free of charge, or is there after the 24-hour period, is there some sort of hourly rate established, or how does that usually work?
Well, I'm not into being a consultant anymore. I used to do that before I came to the nerdery, so there would be a lot of different things that I'd have to do in order to set that up if I was going to accept payment. So I just do it for free, and I try to find time. I've got 2 kids, and I go to a lot of Drupal things, so I don't have a lot of spare time, but I let them know that up front, that I'm not the kind of person that you can call and get something done on demand. But I'm definitely there to help train the nonprofit so that they know how to use their site, so that I can eventually hand off all the intelligence that we build into it to their go-to person. And we here in the Twin Cities, we have a Drupal user group. We meet once a month and try to convince the nonprofit to come to those. And the overall goal of it is to make sure that they have somebody they can go to whenever they need stuff done, but that really can't be me.
Are there instances where companies go in with teams and then they work together after the fact? Not so much a one-on-one, but maybe like a company team supports them after the 24-hour period?
I think so. I know there are a lot of teams filled with team members that all work together. I don't know if that team is technically sponsored by the company they all work for, or if that's just something they do on their own. I know that there are a lot of teams that come every year, and we pretty much know them as, well, that's this company's team, and that's this is company's team.
So, Chris, I need clarification here a little bit for me.
Sure.
So, a nonprofit signs up, they get selected, they're in the challenge. What happens after the 24 hours? What is the commitment from the teams? Is there an official commitment from the teams after that 24-hour period? What does the challenge commit to them? Is there anything?
There is no standard commitment.
Gotcha.
There's no required commitment from the teams. Then don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
If you leave your nonprofit's website in shambles, and if you've made it so that they have to use whatever you've made by breaking their old site or something like that,
right,
then don't be a jerk and do your moral duty of making sure they have something that they can work with. And it's up to each team to decide what their commitment is going to be for the nonprofit. But in the best case, nonprofits have an awesome website after the end of the challenge.
Right.
In the worst case, it's a bit of work that can't be used and needs to be discarded.
So
the page for the hooded do-gooders actually mentions specifically that they put in an additional 70 hours of volunteer work after the event, and they kind of detail a little bit about what they were doing over like the few months after launch.
Yeah.
But I like your choice of words. I think when you make a commitment to work with somebody in an event like this, I think there is an obligation to provide that assistance to them in some known way. And maybe you go into it and say, well, we'll provide it to you at this hourly rate, or the flip side being like what you described. You can't call me at 5 in the morning to help you with something and expect me to answer the phone, but I will work with you in this way.
Right.
And there's no money, but you have to accept the trade-off that, you've got to work around my schedule. Right. And I think that's fair too.
On a practical level, this weekend, I'm dedicating some time to fixing the launch blockers bugs for our nonprofit, and making sure that we actually deploy the new website to their URL.
So that's a great lead-in, Chris, to what. Let's talk about the project that you worked on, because I looked at it and I'm really impressed in what you guys did in 24 hours. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk. Do
you mind if I share my screen?
No, absolutely. You can share your screen. Let's make sure we have all these URLs for the audio listeners later. But I think people should see what you've done.
Depending on when you view this, the URLs will be different, because this Saturday we're intending to launch the nonprofit website. But let me share the specific window that I've got here. All right, so this is their existing website.
Could you give us a quick overview of the nonprofit?
Absolutely. So the nonprofit is Home for Life. They're an animal sanctuary here in Minnesota. They are a home for disadvantaged and neglected animals. These animals really cannot be adopted. They're either just have physical limitations, or they've just had such a difficult life that they're not really good for homes. And they are a home for a number of very cute cats and dogs and turtles and birds, and basically any kind of animal. Their website was, as you can see, I think it's fair to say that this would be a kind of website that you would have made in the 90s, early 90s maybe. It's left aligned.
So what we're looking at right now is the existing website.
Yes, their existing website.
Yeah.
These top-level menu items are not actually links. They're just there to open the link. And so they're a wonderful place. And working with the nonprofit was a very good experience. But you can see the elements of their design here. It's very left aligned. You got the flow. This is not a website that we would value as a very good website in this day and age. So the website that we made them is this next tab, Home for Life. One of the problems I wanted to solve was to make it very clear to people on how to donate. Their donate button was like tucked away in like the third level page. We got it right there at the top. One of our team members made a logo for them, brand new logo. And just to show you this, it's a responsive site.
So Chris, just to ask you a question about that. So was it part of the challenge to build a new or design a new logo for the customer during the challenge?
That's what it became. They came to us and they had told us that they had been spending some time making a new logo. And one of our team members just basically took what they had in raw form and said, well, what about this? And they loved it. And so part of what the challenge can be is a complete design refresh. New branding, new logos, new color schemes. They did come with a style guide wanted to adhere to, and we kind of went with that. And within the first 4 or 6 hours or so, our designers, our front enders, kind of worked together, and they made a design that we spent the rest of the time implementing. But one of the things that they wanted to do is get the rich. They had a professional photographer that they worked with, and they wanted to make sure that they were able to highlight all of those great photos. If you look at the difference between the old site and the new site, the photographer really wanted all of their imagery reflected. That's Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the imaging on this website is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were able to, do a couple things responsive-wise, make sure that we're getting the story right out there, and then again at the bottom, being able to donate. We wanted to be able to do a better job of representing the animals, and so we had the Meet Our Animals page. We were able to get a nice grid of all the animals. This is one of the areas that we're going to improve over time. This is basically like the default grid view.
So Chris, what we're looking at today, like right now, I think this challenge ended like 3 weeks ago, right? Is that right? About right?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So how much of this has developed since then, and how much is exactly what was completed in those 24 hours?
Most of this is exactly what was completed within those 24 hours.
Wow.
We've done a little bit of work with fixing content. And we know we need to add more links to the top menu and other kinds of things that are classified as beta or launch blockers. But the majority of what you see with the imagery, we fixed a number of images because they were cropping wrong. Most of what you see here is as it was. Like some of these bits of content are new. These different events and these different news media elements. But it's mostly just content. The structure, the design, the CSS, the Drupal parts are pretty much unchanged what we were able to finish by the end of the challenge.
So Chris, what is your relationship with the nonprofit moving forward for this particular site?
I'm going to be with a nonprofit for a year. And I'm going to be helping them understand their site. I'm going to be their person that they can contact to make sure that things are fixed, things are secure, things are optimized. And
so is this a Chris endeavor, or is this a notary requirement? Or
you keep saying notary, but it's nerdery.
Nerdery. Sorry.
Is it something about your accent that makes?
Yeah.
You can't say nerdery.
I apologize for that.
Oh, it's fine. I'm just making jokes.
It's Rhode Island.
So, is this a notary requirement?
This is really on me.
Really, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just being a part of the challenge is so rewarding to me as a developer that it's important for me to give something back. Every time I'm entering the challenge, I'm really trying to solve a particularly difficult problem, which is how do you get a team of developers working efficiently under stressful situations and a very tight deadline? So where are the places that the process breaks down, and how can you fix those things? Mm. So it's pretty valuable information. And I've just known, because the first couple times that I did the challenge, like the very first time I did it, I wasn't the captain. I just basically accepted the situation I was in. In fact, the very first time I did the challenge was the day before I joined the nerdery. So here I am, I was putting in 60 hours a week in my other job and jumped into the challenge, and then I'm already tired, so it's like, oh, it's a little bit more tired. And then we were able to make a website for like a local nonprofit, and it didn't go well. By the time that we ended, we weren't anywhere close to being done. Right. And it took us several months after the challenge to get things done in a way that was satisfactory to the nonprofit. but we did get it done.
So the challenge here is a contest too, right? So there are awards given for like the best.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't like to think of it as a contest.
Well,
that's not my goal.
No, I get that, but there are awards given, right, in the end here?
Yeah, and I forget the names of all the awards, but it's basically like one for best design, one for best functionality. There may be others, and then there's the best of show, which is what everyone's shooting for.
And when do they give these awards out?
So it's kind of evolved. Nowadays, they have like 3 weeks after the challenge for people to wrap things up.
Right.
And then they do a final judgment. They used to do the judging like during the event, but that was super stressful and very difficult on the judges. Like they have to make a choice.
Right.
Well, but now that's delayed.
I have a question about the actual nuts and bolts of it. How do you tend to handle the project management? How do you communicate and keep track of who's doing what task? Because I find even when there's no crunch like that, that project management piece is sometimes difficult. Do you just use Basecamp, Jira, Google?
Well, it was very difficult before because we were just using spreadsheets.
Nice.
Can you imagine that? But these days, we use GitHub, and GitHub's been a valuable resource before, during, and after the project because we can have our pre-game up there on GitHub's, make it really easy for people to jump in. And it also supplies an issue queue where we can assign tasks to people. People can jump in and see just their tasks instead of everything. But during the event, things are so hectic that we basically use pencil and paper.
Okay.
You know, like we have a poster board up there, and we write out the specific things that need to be done, and then we assign things. We write the names of things, people's names next to the tasks, and then when they finish things, they come up to the board and they cross them off.
Okay.
Everything else is just so insane.
I'm just thinking of like the irony of Trello imitating an actual board that has things on it, and then you actually imitating Trello by creating a physical board again and putting Post-it notes on it.
Yeah. You know, it's loud, it's cramped. You're tired. You're cranky. Let's just make it as simple as possible. Let's not use all these different bits of technology to simulate what we would normally get if you just had things written down on paper.
Right.
Just go straight to paper.
What time does the challenge start?
It starts at like 8 a.m.
Okay.
And it finishes at 8 a.m.
Okay.
So Chris, if Talking Drupal wanted to create a team to join this challenge next year, how would we go about doing that?
Well, you'd need to find one of the locations you wanted to go to. Whether it's I suspect that either we'll do it in the same locations this year, or maybe we'll branch out even further.
I hear Providence pretty nice.
But you'll be listening along to overnightwebsitechallenge.com, and that's where all the information about the event is going to be.
So I guess my question, Chris, is can any team join it?
Yeah, but you physically have to be there.
Yeah, no, I get that. Right. Yep.
Yeah. In fact, that's been kind of a sticking point because there are lots of great Drupal developers that are interested in participating, but we're actually going to have to fly them out. So
but you have to be there physically for the challenge.
Yes, you can't do it remotely. You can't be a remote worker.
Okay.
So Chris, tell us or reiterate to us why you do this or why somebody would do this. Because what I just got from you was it's cramped, you're tired, it's hectic, things are crazy, and there's got to be a reason why people want to do this.
Because you do good.
Yeah.
You do good for a needy nonprofit that really needs help. Sometimes they have a computer person, sometimes they very much don't. And they need help getting their message out. They need help accepting donations and making their nonprofit thrive. And there are a lot of nonprofits that need this help. They have people that care, they have people that do good, but they don't have strength in this area.
So how much does it, are there statistics on how much it helps nonprofits? Like, are there like donations before the challenge versus donations after the challenge?
I think we really need to do a better job of keeping track of that data, but I think each nonprofit has that data, and maybe we could find a way to share that data, but that seems to be the kind of data that's difficult to share.
Well, and that actually, coming up with some of those might be a way to increase corporate support for people to participate. Yeah. Because I think when you can demonstrate value delivered, then they can more easily assign a quantity to that and say, oh, well, we'll get X kind of, marketing value out of delivering this to a nonprofit. And
one of the things we've certainly kept track of over the years is, the overall number of hours that people have put in. And I don't have that statistic off the top of my head, but it's significant.
The other thing, though, is they're 501c3s, so it's all public information.
Oh,
it's not,
right.
It's not as difficult. It may take time to compile, but it's all available.
But it's, generally speaking, it's more a matter of getting somebody to ask the right questions necessarily than it being difficult to get them to answer them, because it's helping them tell their story too. And that's one of those sort of like functions of design research that a lot of people kind of miss, is that if you don't collect that kind of information, you can't tell the story of whether or not it's actually been a successful effort.
Right.
Chris, do the teams get something out of this other than bragging rights at the end? Once the voting's all done, is there like a trophy or like a T-shirt or something?
If you win one of the prizes, best design, best in show, you get a little plaque, and every team gets a free T-shirt that says, "I stayed up 24 hours making a website and all I got was a silly T-shirt."
Perfect.
And at every one of these events, we have drawings for prizes and stuff like that. One year I won a camera.
So really what you're telling me is helping people is secondary. Getting a cool T-shirt is the primary reason for doing it.
It's the experience. There are so many different experiences that we're exposed to from a web development perspective, but this is not one of them. You can't really find coder challenges near you these days. And when I was in college, we did like ACM coding challenges, and they were more difficult than the overnight website challenge was, because it was even more stressful. But if you're constantly trying to push your own professional boundaries and trying to find ways to improve your skills and have new experiences, then this is the perfect kind of situation.
So, Chris, let's move on to something I just want to ask you a quick question about. Is your thoughts on Drupal 8? And the reason I'm asking this is because on Google Plus you've been a really strong advocate of Drupal 8.
Yeah.
And I would just like to get some thoughts from you about how our listeners should think about Drupal 8 moving forward.
I think this is my 10th year working with Drupal in some capacity. And I've never been more excited about what we can make with Drupal 8. It's the story of how Drupal 8 has been made is pretty compelling in itself. And I think Larry Garfield is going around to different tech conferences telling that story. But basically, from my perspective, Drupal 8 is really exciting because if you wanted Drupal to just be a part of your development process, to just treat it as a dumb box and find ways of getting data in and getting data out, having it be just the content management system rather than the thing that governs all the things, it's really powerful. You mentioned at the beginning, I do .NET development as well as Drupal. Those are two very different things. And from my .NET experience, I've seen the value of being able to just create something small, but just able to have a well-described interface of getting the data out. And that's kind of what we have with Drupal 8. With Android development, I can have Drupal be the place where the content is managed and just connect to it through a RESTful API. So if I wanted to make my Android projects go faster, I could just use Drupal for the content and then use Android for the interface. And for JavaScript application development, same situation. Just have Drupal manage the data and implement your front end any way you want. So for like being able to be a component within a tool chain, it's very exciting. Drupal 7 and 6 and basically all the way up has been wanting to do all the things. We've had to make extra effort to hook in a REST API or some other kind of API with it, and it's not very well known. It's not as easy as it should be in order to make all that work. So it's pretty exciting in that regard.
Chris, I'm a little fascinated by your connection with .NET and Drupal. I'm gonna put you on the spot with this question a little bit.
Sure.
Because in my own company we do .NET work and Drupal work.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit interested to know. I see you as an evangelist for Drupal.
Yeah.
But not an evangelist for .NET, and maybe because I'm not looking in the right spaces. I'm curious about that from your perspective.
Well, these days, I do far more Drupal development than I do .NET development. I'm here at the Nerdery. We've got a lot of people who do .NET development on a day-to-day basis, and I've become one of the people here that is known as a Drupal person. So I get a lot of the Drupal projects, and very little of the .NET. But when I was working for myself, I basically approached solving problems and creating solutions as, is it a simple website? That sounds like a Drupal project. Is it a web application? That sounds like .NET.
So do you feel that way moving forward, or is Drupal 8 going to play a role in that for you?
For me, I'm looking to Drupal to being able to handle the area of web application development, and that's mostly because when you get Drupal 8, it's built on top of Symfony components, and it's extremely capable of being able to drive applications. Drupal 7 today is certainly capable of driving web applications, and a lot of people use it for that. I like .NET because I like ASP.NET MVC. I like the framework. It was very easy for me to teach myself on how to code with it. It wasn't easy teaching myself how to code Drupal development. There were a lot of things that I saw in it that I didn't expect to see. I didn't understand the hook system immediately. It took me a bit to create my block, and there were a number of developers that I was working with at the time that just were frustrated with me. It's like, why aren't you getting this? It's like, because this is so new. This is not what I expect. And that is also a part of why Drupal 8 is exciting, because if you throw in a person that just understands software development from any kind of experience, whether it's Python or whether it's .NET, or if you understand dependency injection, you'll see something you recognize. If you understand model view controller, you'll see things you recognize. It may not be an idea that 100% maps to what you see, but you're not going to be immediately lost in the woods. You don't have to learn PHP 4.
Right, exactly. All right, I think we're at the end of our show. I'm going to forego the module of the week, actually, since we are at about an hour and 15 minutes. So we'll save that for another time. Chris, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Not a problem.
Your insight into the overnight website challenge has been really interesting to me. We're considering, I say I, and I'm saying we, at the same time, are considering doing something like this for an event we have scheduled at the end of the year here in Providence, and your insight has been fantastic. I'm going to open this up to the other hosts here. Does anyone have any final questions for Chris before we close this out?
I just want to say thanks because I think insights on Drupal 8, insights on community building, on how Drupal plays a role in building a team to do a challenge like that. I think it's all been really great stuff. So thanks.
Yeah, it's definitely been fascinating. And I'll be looking to learn a little bit more about this challenge. I think it could be rewarding to do.
So, Chris, if someone is looking to follow you online or learn what you're doing, where should they follow you?
I'm at plus Chris Weber on Google+.
That's 1B?
1B, yes. I'm not a 6'9" former basketball player.
That's right. All right, great. Thank you.
You can also find me at Chris M. Weber on Twitter.
Great. And his information will be in the show notes as well. Jason, how about you?
You can find me at jpomentel, and that's pretty much everywhere, or hwdesignco.com. And should by the time we talk next week, I'm pretty sure that responsive typography will be available from O'Reilly. I have to plow through more edits today, but it's coming together.
Is there a URL for that? I think there is.
If you go to responsivetypographybook.com, there's a info list and info about the book, and that will also link to purchase.
Great. So if you are a listener of this show and want to thank us in some way, you could go and order that book from Jason's URL.
Or better yet, if you just want to know more about using web fonts and using them well. That's the whole idea.
But you'll only know that by buying the book, right?
Well, it should make it a lot easier for you. That's the whole idea.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry,
I'm interested.
Well, cool. I'll let you know when it's ready.
All right.
He'll let you know where you can buy the book.
I'll drop money for that.
Hey, it's an economical purchase. That's going to be priced pretty reasonably. So I'm happy about that.
Come on now, if you can buy a book that will help you do business better and build websites better for under $20, that is a no-brainer, right?
Well, that's what I'm hoping, because I put a lot of time into writing it, so I'm hoping someone's going to buy it.
Yeah.
Besides my immediate friends and family.
At least the book club will be buying it.
I sure hope so. If I can at least convince, maybe I can get more than 3 people to show up. I don't know. It might be a tough one.
All right,
but
John,
you still have to read it.
Let's move on to John Picozzi.
You can find me on all the social networks at John Picozzi, and always on at oomphinc.com.
Thank you, John. And how about you, Nick?
You can find me at NickSpan pretty much everywhere, and at enlighten.net.
Great, and talk to you guys next week. I'm Stephen Cross at StephenCross.com with a PH, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Good week.